Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 17th. Well, the tale of two indexes is starting to take shape here as the S&P fades a bit further. That brief spike, we started off the day with the magenta actually above the MBI white, and then as things started to proceed, we were getting close to getting back to relative high there, and then things started to fade, and this was that DSC spread here where the sign broke off, and we suggested that it would suggest that weakness going in between, but that you would still hold support, which we did. So not too surprising, and this is because that you look at that shakeout and it's just been blasé. But then you have the Nasdaq continuing to press new highs, even though it didn't quite hold it, and that's because you had considerably different readings from an MBI standpoint, because you have magenta clearly well above. You had the same DOC breakout, but also with rising steel, and that steel containment was just enough to keep things moving. And oddly enough, we have gold rising here at 100%. So if we were lower than the 100%, it would suggest that we would be moving to the 100%. We're already there. So it's kind of a moot situation from that standpoint, but it still indicates that the NASDAQ has a lot more influence at this particular stage and is really keeping things afloat, or at least from getting worse. We can see that money flowed out of treasuries, keeping the yield considerably higher, even though they faded off a little bit later in the day. But it's clearly got to go there. I mean, that spike was evident at that particular stage. The fact that it held up as long as it has, um, it's just that disbelief and unwilling to accept what is. Oil's still staying soft. So, again, it's going to take a while for it's got to stay down at these levels for an extended period. I think we got some uh, really telling information from Home Depot and the descriptions of their earning collapse as far as what's happening generally in real estate. Was it catastrophic? Well, you had some weather issues both in the West and storm wise and stuff. So fine, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They say that some of that is a one-time event, so to speak, but definitely something to be keeping an eye on, because as housing goes, it really starts to become a bellwether as to how resilient the economy is going to be with the rising interest rates, whether people are willing to invest um, into their properties, things like that, because that really is a driver of the economic engine. From a year standpoint, absolutely nothing happening, just flat as a bell. We expect it to move to the 50% with the MBI white lead. Hasn't done so because we've had some strong short-term buy setups holding it. So we'll see if it can continue to do that. But any fade off or pop up of orange is certainly going to put it in danger of touching that 50% range right there. And there isn't any good news coming out of the Eurozone, so it's no shock. From a gold standpoint, a little bit of softening there. That was that white spike we looked, well, you would expect to move to the 50%. Starting there now that you have white MBA leading. Before we had the white spike, but magenta was still over yellow, and it wasn't until that crossed over that we started to get the softening. From a Bitcoin standpoint, absolutely nothing taking place there, nothing taking place on ETH either, though ETH is a bit stronger with that nice spike of magenta coming through there. So any additional impetus or motivation will certainly cause that to break above that 61% and move towards the 76. And this is what we've been looking at for the last week, these consecutively lower high peaks. And we had the white MBI lead right there. It popped back above. Magenta was holding up pretty well, but then started to spike middle of the day. And once it did, it was just a matter of time in that case for it to start breaking down. And programs got out of the longs, went to the short side of it. And you still have MBI white leading at this particular stage right at the 23%. You get a turnaround of the orange here in the DOC moving back up at all, and you'll have that configuration of a continuation, which would take us to that 0%. That's down to 41.11. We're at the 24. Not inconceivable for that to happen. Pretty straightforward in post market, even can happen before then. And so this is what we saw in the morning. We moved right back up to that 41.47. Downside was that 41.37. That was that pre market action. And then as soon as the market opened, there were a couple of attempts right back at it, but once it was below, it became exceedingly difficult to sustain that. And you can see all those MBI weight spikes leading to the moves to the 0% pretty consistently. And right about now, still had one that just took place right there, leading to some softness, and the white is leading on a 5 minute, kind of irrelevant. In the post market, really need more liquidity happening during the day, but even again from a 5 minute chart, still relatively easy to expose that overall direction and those interplay declines that take place during the day when we see these significant markers that just give us a heads up as to exactly where they're going with things. As always, though, continue to follow it. I'll put up relevant charts on the Skype chat. Trade well. We'll talk to you later.